everyone. I'm Nikki Kagan, and thank you for joining us in this podcast. This podcast is part of Horse Assisted Education Week, in which me, along with my colleagues from all over the world, are going to be sharing videos and articles and interviews with clients and so forth about this methodology of teaching leadership development with horses. So today I'm very pleased to have with me Kim Cole. Kim is an HR director at a large global IT company, and she has participated in and even assisted in delivering course assisted education programs. So, Kim has actually been present at three of our sessions. The first one, she was a participant and she came for some individual and personal development. The second one was here in Israel, and she came as part of a leadership team. And the third one, she actually assisted as an HR director and representative. So, Kim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Well, Nikki, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a true pleasure to speak with you today. We've known each other for a while, and I have over 30 years of HR experience. Not that I want to show my age, but but it certainly was amazing participating in the previous sessions that you held, and I look forward to our podcast today.
Thank you. Yes, we have a long history together. Now, Kim, I know you have horses of your own. And I also know through our discussions that the first session in which you participated, the one in Boston, was very impactful, if not immediately. In other words, maybe not that day, but if I remember correctly, you spoke about having some epiphanies that occurred a day or two later. Can you tell us a little bit about your first experience of being with horses in this way?
Yes, I specifically remember that it was a very grounding experience for me. And again, not to have a pun in there right off the bat, but I think for people who grew up riding, there are many prescriptions when we ride. You know, more from the rider to the horse, not necessarily a mutual relationship at all times. Um, and and as a writer, we have expectations of our horse or horses.
As I'm listening to you talk, I'm reminded of how a lot of employees feel. They'd probably say that very same thing about their managers.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, being in HR or in the people field for over 30 years, obviously I've seen that as well in the workplace, and even for myself as a manager of my team. There are prescriptions and expectations there. I think going back to the session in Boston, one of the things that was grounding for me was you did a exercise and a piece around style of leadership. And I remember finding it interesting that I thought I would be more of a side by side leader, but I wasn't. I was more of a forward leader. And not that that's a bad thing. There's all different types of style of leadership that work, but I remember that wasn't what I thought I would show in that session, and I really had to think then about that learning and taking it back not only to my HR team, of course, who I was leading at the time, and how my style of leadership works for them, but also in the general field of HR and working with managers at our company and how to help them understand their different styles of leadership.
Exactly. It's really about gaining an understanding of where our comfort zones are so that we can work to broaden our horizons. So, understanding that maybe you are more of a forward leader, maybe to do some work around what is it about the way I behave that led me to believe I was more of a participative or side by side, as you said. And does my forward style suit me? And what does this all mean in the context of how I lead my people? So it's really about being provocative. So thank you for sharing that. That's a great takeaway. I know that after that first experience, I think there was a gap, might have been a few years even, before you experienced your first team session as a participant. And if I remember correctly, this was a senior leadership team of global HR specialists who came together as a team to do some exploration. So, can you tell us a little bit about that experience? And was there anything in particular that stood out for you relative to that team?
Yeah, I remember being very excited about this second session. Again, as a reminder, the first time I went through it for personal development, and the second time I was going through it with my HR team, my people team, not who I managed. So these were peers of mine. I was a bit nervous, Nikki. I do remember because from my first session, it took a few days for things to sink in, the learnings from the experience. And I remember being so excited to show up as a team and have my peers go through a similar experience, but also knowing that sometimes there are lessons that take time to sink in. But one of the things that was great during that session is, first of all, it was a level playing field. We had HR leaders from around the world, different many different cultures, very diverse group, and we all entered the session the same. I think it's also something that horses bring, and that's one of the uniqueness of what you do, is that horses they really don't care who you are. They don't care if you're the general manager or the CEO. You're a person, and they're going to give you feedback. They really, again, they don't care what your title is. So I do also remember having some moments of surprise. For example, one individual who I had worked with for I would say many years, very gracious, generous, patience. Also led a large HR team in one of our regions. I would have expected this person to show those same qualities in the exercises that you were facilitating, of course, but that's not what happened. And to me, that was very surprising. It was an aha moment for me. I think an aha moment for that individual that it's almost like when they were out of their comfort zone, I don't know, it's almost like some of their true, personality came out, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just that they started using control, which, of course, the horses resisted and brought out, instead of showing the normal persona of patience.
So it was a good example of, or a good demonstration of, how we can change when we're under pressure and we show sides of ourselves that we generally keep hidden. If I think about the Johari window that talks about self and other awareness, that's what comes to mind for me. We keep some aspects of ourselves hidden because maybe they're not our best expressions of who we are. But when we are in a position of discomfort or a new situation, then they sneak out and we have to face them, which is what happened with that individual, as I remember correctly.
But the more we talk and the more I think, the horses, in this type of experience, because again, they don't really care. They don't really care what your title is. They don't know your history. They don't care. They care about who you are with them at that present moment. Because of because the horses bring that out, which is so unique during a session like this. But really the magic, Nikki, I have to say, is your facilitation, because and I'm just thinking back to this particular instance. I think this person had an aha moment as well personally, where you brought the team in. We did some exercises, but then you brought the team in, and there's a debriefing, a learning, facilitation, and and then there's more learning throughout the day. And I know you customize your courses, of course, to the goal in mind, and the group participating and things like that. But I think that's where the magic is there's facilitation on your part, and really bringing up these issues and talking about them openly. That's where the real learning happens.
Well, thank you. I do think that it's really important to not leave people hanging with experiences and at the same time to facilitate the conversation in such a way that the individual doesn't feel that they have done something wrong or they're shamed or feeling judged. So I agree with you. That's really an important point.
And I think too, again, people come with different expectations of a course, and this is with any course of, but when you come to a course like this where you may or may not have had experience with horses, some people are scared of horses. So I think, again, getting everyone on the same playing field, everyone feels safe. I mean, you go through safety rules, of course, but it's such a safe environment, not just physically, but emotionally, and that's again where a lot of the learning takes place, whether at the time or what happened to me, where I think it took a day or 2 for things to sink in, and then it was like, "Oh, wow, okay."
So you mentioned that not everybody has experience with horses, and in fact, I would say most people don't. So one of the challenges those of us face who do this work um, is that it's difficult to describe the experience to corporate clients who have never had any exposure to horses. So you've participated in and you've certainly designed many typical, more typical, when I say typical, I mean uh, meeting style leadership development programs. And so you have the benefit of seeing it from both sides. What do you think sets this approach apart? And what do you think would be important for your colleagues and peers um, who would be potential clients bringing teams to participate in a program like this?
Wow, that's a great question. I think yes, I mean, there's all types of learning that can be done at many different venues. And even when we talk about out of the boardroom, and maybe that's some old language, maybe I'm dating myself again, but out of the classroom or out of the boardroom, you can have so many different types of learning and what I call shared experiences. But I think that what the horses bring is so unique, and this is where it it's just different. It goes beyond a typical shared experience, and there may be some facilitation and some aha moments and some team learning. But I think this is the horses change you because they force you to be present at in the moment. And that's the difference. Because the horses, they're almost a mirror. They become a mirror of yourself. So whatever you're reflecting, I think many times the horses reflect back to you, and that's it forces you to be present, or at least look at yourself and say, what is going on? How am I treating my employees? How am I trying to drive change or drive innovation with my workforce? I mean, all those things, you can link them back to what you do for a living. Again, back to that boardroom.
Right, right. And I think what you said about uh, reflecting back how we're showing up, sometimes we like what we see and we can feel all good and proud of ourselves, and sometimes we don't. But I think one of the things also, and I think you mentioned this to me, is that it can be very private. In other words, the experience that you're having with a horse is your own experience. And if you choose not to talk about it with your group or even with the facilitator, that's okay. You still, the point is driven home. So I think when you spoke about not having the epiphany until a day or two later, that was okay. As facilitators, we left you with whatever was coming up for you until when and if you were ready to talk about it. And it turned out it happened after the fact. And here it is, however many years later, and it's still clear and present for you today as it was then. So I think that kind of speaks for itself as well. So, Kim, do you have any lasting comments for anyone out there who's not yet experienced horse-assisted development? Whether they're leaders looking for something for their teams, or whether they're teams looking to suggest something for their leaders.
I think it's pretty simple. I think this is such a unique experience that it's just it goes beyond the typical shared experience. I mean, it's more because of the being present with the horses, them not caring who anybody is, again, title or what your history is or what you're bringing. They're really a check of presence. And again, Nikki, the magic is in the facilitation. You bringing the teams together, the group together. If it's a personal session, you may even have individual conversations with people that assist them in the learning throughout the day and beyond, of course. But I think that I can't say enough about it. It's such a unique experience, and I go back to what I said in the very beginning. It was a very grounding experience for me. I remember that first session in Boston. It was a real experience. It wasn't just, yes, I'm going to this seminar to learn this, or I'm going to this offsite to learn this, or even the second session, oh, we're going to have a team together and we're going to do some team building experience. That's not what these sessions are. They definitely go a lot beyond that.
Well, and I think it's safe to say, given what you've shared with us today, that even though you've attended three sessions, all three were vastly different, and all three had very distinct and different takeaways and value added.
Definitely. Definitely different. And eh, bringing corporate groups, and of course that's one of my focuses. It's just so valuable to have the opportunity to be offsite, to have the opportunity to have a different view. You're outside, you have a level playing field with everyone there, and it's in a safe environment. You provide the safe environment for people to learn in.
Wow, that's a lot, Kim. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with all of us about your experience. And I hope that sometime in the future I see you for a fourth session. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to us catching up very soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Nikki. Take care.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening.